Welcome to OutWithDan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today I'm excited to talk to HeatherAimeeO'Neill about The Irish Goodbye. Will you show us that beautiful cover?
Yes.
Oh, I love that. That is absolutely beautiful. Love the colors, and it is so indicative of the setting where you set your story. So will you give the audience a little overview about what The Irish Goodbye is?
Sure. It is a story about the Ryan sisters, three sisters who returned to their family's home for Thanksgiving. And it's about a decade or a little bit over a decade since they lost their brother, which was a traumatic event that really fractured the family. And over the course of the weekend, they have to confront the past. Lots of kind of long buried secrets emerge and simmering resentments come to a boil, which gives them plenty of opportunity to have to apologize and hopefully forgive.
That's wonderful. So I grew up as an only child, so I don't have the experience of having siblings, but I believe you have, is it two sisters in real life?
I do.
And do you get along? I mean, I know that's a personal question because
that's okay.
If you hated your sisters, I'm sure it'd be a little hard to say, but
I don't think you can write a book about sisters and not be expected to, have a question here or there about your own.
Yes. So, did you grow up on Long Island or?
Yeah, I grew up on Long Island in a town called Huntington, in a house, not totally dissimilar to the house that is in this book. I love houses on the water, big kind of, there's something really like in my bones about that. So that setting was important to me. Even my second book is actually taking place in kind of in a similar setting. So I grew up in Huntington and I live in Brooklyn now, but both my sisters and my parents are still in Huntington, and we go out there for the month of July every year and spend time and get to have like some put our feet in the sand and enjoy the view.
That's so wonderful. I as I said, grew up as an only child, but in my mother's family there were 5 siblings and they just loved to fight. So there was sort of a fair question about, do you get along with your siblings? Because
definitely.
My mother and her siblings, when they weren't trying to kill each other, could be friendly occasionally, but it was rare. So I think that family dynamic is something I enjoy reading so much, especially because there are secrets within a family and there are secrets that the family possesses outside of the rest of the world. And I think that that's a fun thing to unpack. So what was that like for you to create a world that there was a lot of secrets that had to be unpacked?
Yeah, so when I started writing the book, I really wanted to write a story about the impact of grief on a family. I've experienced a lot of loss in my life, and my family has as well. But I didn't want to write about my family. And I also didn't want to write just about grief. I was more interested in the way that grief is kind of insidious and can show up in a lot of different ways. And so when I was exploring the relationship between these sisters, I really wanted to think about like how did these past tragedies affect them, and how is that showing up very uniquely and specifically in their lives right now? And they're all kind of a mess in their own individual way, and sort of longing, I think all of them are longing to be more honest and authentic and real. That I see as like so much of the journey. And part of that is telling the truth and revealing kind of what's actually going on, beneath the surface of it all.
Well, and I think if we were friends with one or all 3 of the sisters, just a casual everyday acquaintance friend. I think that we would look at these three sisters and say, oh my gosh, what a wonderful life they have, because they're each successful in their own way. They have what looks like a cocoon of a great life, but yet you do show us that their life is unraveling in different ways for each of the three of them. And so, so when I was reading this, their brother dies tragically. And I thought to myself, that must have really a lifelong effect on the people around the person who has died.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you're right that if you were to just look at all three sisters and kind of, observe their lives on the surface, it would seem like everything was fine, and they all have their kind of defined roles within the family. And that, I'm so curious about that, and that probably has a lot to do with growing up gay and not being able to share that part of myself for a really long time. I grew up in the 90s, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't think I knew anybody who was gay. So
I know that feeling.
yeah. And I do think that mask wearing is a very it's something that a lot of queer people can relate to. And so I was able to really clearly I'm still unpacking that, and that went into, I think, all of their storylines. What does it mean to carry this burden on your own? And do you have to? How does it cause? What is the collateral damage of that kind of withholding? And I think the collateral damage is real, as it is for anybody who's closeted. You're not known, and you can't share yourself. So I really wanted to explore those themes in these characters, but in different ways.
And I find what you just said to be so. I understand it so well. I remember for years and years and years, sort of revising every success I had, especially if it had anything to do with a queer agenda. Because while my parents knew, my parents weren't the kind of parents that went to see me perform when I was in school plays or sang or whatever. Unless it was church related, they never showed up, so to speak. So I didn't have the kind of parents who, go to your baseball game or go to a performance that you might have. So I found that in my adult life, even though I had shared things about me, I was still constantly editing, and it's tiresome. It's a huge suitcase that is full of bricks, and you carry that with you because you think, well, I know they love me, but do they really accept me? Or as you said, do they really see me? Do they see my potential? And I find that I know a lot of queer people have had the experience of having to be almost an overachiever, because if we don't overachieve, we may never really be seen. And so you gave sort of a little bit of that with Kate, I think, or at least that's what I felt, that Kate was a bit of an overachiever. She really felt like she had to do things, and she's not the queer character. But I feel like you infuse Kate with that desire to be an overachiever and to accomplish everything she could. And yet there comes a point where Kate says, you know what, not anymore. I'm tired.
Absolutely. And I love that reading, because I didn't quite think about it in that way, but there's a lot of that kind of, even though Kate is very, very straight.
Yes.
But yeah, that element of hiding, I think, is very true. And it's interesting when you were I know that you're from Eastern North Carolina, which is actually my wife's family is from there. And before meeting my wife, I hadn't spent a lot of time in the South, and I love the South, but that was the only time I have experienced feeling threatened, for being gay, which was, it just wasn't an experience that I had in the Northeast. And And so when you're talking about that constant editing, it's, for many queer people and a lot of other people, it can be a matter of safety. And I think that with Kate, it is also a matter of safety. Like she feels that if her family and everybody knows the part that she plays and the significance that she thinks it has on her brother's death, that she'll be kicked out of the tribe in a way, right? I mean, isn't that kind of everybody's fear? So I think it's about self-preservation, and it's the same with Maggie. The secret that she's withholding from Isabel, she's afraid of rejection, and that's making things so much worse. And Alice as well, the secret she's holding from her husband and from, less so her sisters, but certainly her mother. It comes from this fear of being rejected. What if I say this thing? Are these people going to still love me and take care of me?
Well, and I thought that was something that you did so beautifully as an author. You took some of the things that I would say you and I have personally experienced, and you gave those types of experiences to all three of the sisters in their own way. And of course, another thing about Kate is, she is running into that glass ceiling, and she knows her worth, yet there's still a glass ceiling that she can't get through. And I don't know what that's like. I mean, I do in some ways, but mostly I don't know it from a woman's perspective. But sadly, we see that kind of BS still happening in today's world. We don't get past it. And I love that. I love the fact that, the whole cell phone thing was so funny to me, because I had a friend that owned her own clothing line, and she was always running from A to B. She was in a hurry. She was successful, but she was in a hurry. And one day her son took her cell phone, and they lived in a high rise. They got to the floor, and he took the cell phone and dropped it through the crack between the elevator and the landing. Goodbye, cell phone. And that was like the third one in a month he'd managed to dispose of. And I thought, so when that happened to Kate, I thought, sometimes when we are so sure we've got our life together and we're hurrying through life shows you a whole different route than you ever could have imagined that morning.
Yeah, it's so, and that is based on a true story of my own. not in an airplane, but yes, my toddler son learning how to potty train and having my phone and walking into the bathroom with my phone and walking out without it, and I was like, "Where's my phone?" And you can imagine where my phone was. No concern to him. It's back there.
And so there's one point on the plane where Kate keeps checking an email, and Poppy, her daughter, doesn't want any part of it. So then when the phone gets messed up, I'm like, well, this was a little bit of retribution. Now, I will say that if I were a parent, I would probably be in jail if Poppy was my child. I'm like, oh my goodness. But I knew a lot of Poppies growing up, and I've known quite a few in my adult life as well. But I was like, oh my Lord, you didn't give Kate the easy route.
No, but I think that Kate got, the universe gave her what she needed, because I think Poppy was is a little bit of a miniature version of her, and she forces, she's the one. It's when I think of Kate as the character in the book, Kate's the one who says the thing, right? And I kind of liked writing her in that way, because of course she's carrying this massive secret that she doesn't feel she can share or unearth. I mean, she can barely reveal it to herself. And yet she's the one that's calling everybody else out. And I think Poppy kind of has a little bit of that in her. And I think it's good. I think Kate needs that,
Well, and Kate, the character, does say in the story that, she understands that Augustus is not like her, but Poppy really is. So she understands she understands that Poppy is sort of a carbon copy. And, I've heard a lot of parents say, "Oh, I hope you have one just like you."
Yeah.
And so Kate did. So
yes. It's funny when you see, when you see yourself, you mirrored back in your children. It is an a unique experience.
I can imagine. I can imagine. So, I love Alice's response towards the end. You know, don't ask me to help you on any of your diets anymore. And I thought, oh, I feel for Alice. I have friends that don't eat this and don't eat that, and it's like, oh dear God, I'm so tired of tailoring my eating around
Yeah.
you. So, but
Yeah.
you know, you as an author took a chance, I'm going to say, and with Alice and some of the decisions Alice has to come to. But I was really very appreciative of where you went with Alice's narrative, because I think Alice really faces the one thing that a parent is really difficult to face, and making a decision based on what needs to be the decision that really needs to be made. And I really thought you did that so brilliantly and with such tenderness that you can't help but root for Alice and want Alice to win.
Yeah, that is exactly how I felt about her. I really struggled with the decision with her. I felt like we were kind of in it together. And I felt like she was the character I was most rooting for in some ways, because I just felt like she was really fighting the good fight. You know, she was really her in a lot of ways, her life was pretty small. And I don't mean that dismissively.
No,
It was it by choice, and but this kind of longing for selfhood and to kind of reemerge. I love a good coming of age late in life story, you know, where these things kind of I think coming of age happens continuously. So that's really what I felt with her. And her character, I felt very tender about her character.
I did too, as the reader. I really did. I mean, I loved all three sisters. I really did. But there was something about Alice that I just saw, as you say, she had chosen to remain local. And that is a choice oftentimes at least one sibling makes, sometimes more than one. But I find that, especially if there are three or more, usually one sibling stays local. And then as life progresses, they envy the freedom that perhaps the other siblings have. And then of course, as always happens, the universe gives them that ultimate crossroads to come to. And it's like, holy cow,
Yeah. Like it's that kind of, that the idea of putting out into the universe, what it is you want, and then the universe answers. You're like, wait a second, hold on. This isn't exactly how I thought it was going to be. But one thing I will add about Alice with the food restrictions, I have celiac, and it's celiac runs, and my sister has it. Almost all of my nephews and my niece have it, and so I'm so aware of like the food allergy stuff. And I actually had a lot more about that in the book, and then just kind of cut it because.
Well, you know what? I owe you lunch or dinner when I meet you in person, since I made fun of people who have restrictions.
I'll make you a really good gluten-free meal. And
oh, that's perfect. I absolutely love that. No, it's so funny. About the only thing I don't eat is I don't particularly care for avocados. I won't see precisely. And I've lived in Florida and in California for the last 35 years.
They just grow on trees in your backyard, basically, right?
Now, I will eat guacamole if it has so much garlic in it, I forget that there's avocado in it. That's probably my only, and I don't really eat sushi either, but but I love to make fun of other people, because I'm like, oh, really? I really wanted that pizza. Why aren't we having a pizza? It's just a crazy, goofy thing. So besides being an excellent writer, and this is your debut novel, congratulations. I saw that you're also a poet, and you're the assistant director of the Sackett Street Writers Workshop. What is Sackett Street Workers Workshop? I'll get
Sackett Street Writers. Yeah, it's a fantastic writing program, writing workshop organization started by Julia Fierro, who's a wonderful writer, teacher, writer, citizen. And we hire teachers. Initially, it was really started much smaller, for writers to teach out of their apartments. So for many, many years, I was teaching, at my kitchen table. A lot of teachers now do it on Zoom. I do a lot more on Zoom these days since the pandemic. And there are now classes that are offered, like we'll rent spaces and writers will have an opportunity to teach there. But there's small groups, like 6 to maybe top 10 people. And Julia actually lives in LA, but most of the classes are held in Brooklyn or Manhattan in the New York area. And we just have this extraordinary community of writers who've gone on to publish and do really well. And teachers, it's a great opportunity for, it's hard to make a living as a writer, and teaching is certainly a way to help support a lot of writers. And I've been with Sackett Street for a really long time. Oh gosh, almost 18 years at this point.
Wow.
Yeah. And I love it. I love the community. I love teaching. Teaching is a real passion of mine. And the community there is just wonderful. I mean, in one class you will have writers of really high caliber and beginning writers, and it's a beautiful community.
Oh, that is so wonderful. I'll look into that. I think that's wonderful. Well, great. How do we find them? You
could go to Sackett Street, SackettStreetWriters.com.
Okay.
And there's tons of classes. So many classes, so many wonderful writers, different genres, in person, again, over Zoom. So a lot of different opportunities.
Fantastic. Well, people who already know you, or for your future fans, what's the best place for them to find the information about you?
You could go to my website, which is HeatherAimeeO'Neill.com, and Aimee is spelled AIMEE. And that's the same address for my Instagram. And would love to meet new people and, hear about your work and stories.
That is absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for this wonderful book, The Irish Goodbye. And just before I let you go, so I thought to myself, that sounds familiar to me. So I looked up The Irish Goodbye, and I was sort of amazed at what the little, I'm using quotation marks, is about, because an Irish goodbye is when you sort of disappear.
Sorry.
And that's okay. And almost all parties I go to, I do an Irish goodbye. I just didn't know I didn't know that was a name for it. And I should know because my family's Irish, but I don't usually announce my leaving or departing from a group. I just go on about my business, and it doesn't make all hosts happy, but I've made hosts less happy by announcing I was leaving.
I really love a good Irish goodbye. I mean, I have a very large family. We're like 100 plus and counting, and we get together. And if you don't know how to do an Irish goodbye, it's like survival. You're never going to get out of there. I actually really, one of my sisters is sort of brilliant at it. You'll be mid conversation and she'll say, like, I'm just gonna go grab a drink, and like suddenly an hour later, where's Melanie? Oh, she
Melanie is my spirit animal for sure. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being with me today, Heather. I enjoyed the book and I enjoyed our chat.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at OutWithDan.com, on Twitter at OutWithDan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.